Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. So we are in the middle of the Modern Women's Health Summit. So we are interviewing experts in all different fields of women's health, in nutrition, and we're talking about some of the issues that come up when we are trying to be healthy, happy people in modern society, because unfortunately our modern cultures are not very set up for it to be easy for us to achieve optimal health. And so we're talking with people about some ways that we can get around those issues and make sure that we are doing everything that we can while keeping our sanity in real life. So today I have Dr. Sara Russell with me. Sara is a nutritional therapy practitioner who works remotely with clients worldwide, specializing in complex health issues. Sara approaches each client's health goals foundationally from a root cause-oriented, bio-individual, and client-centered perspective. And you can learn more about Sara's work and read her blog, which is fantastic, at buildnurturerestore.com. And we will link to her blog in the post of this after the video as well. So hi, Sara. Thanks so much for joining.
Hi, Molly. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So I got to read a little bit about you on your website. I really enjoyed reading your story about growing up abroad and what sounds like a few tumultuous years with your relationship with food in your youth, but then finding yourself in Tuscany, raising chickens, foraging for herbs. And I'd love to hear kind of how that early experience impacted your view of natural health care. Is that what brought you to this industry?
Yeah, in great part, yes. So basically, I went from a very poverty-stricken early childhood in an urban area in Venice, and to a somewhat poverty-stricken, but still, but enjoyable kind of middle childhood in Tuscany, where we lived in the countryside, and I was able to gather a lot of food. And for me, coming from from a place where I was always hungry to a place where food just grew from the ground was just the most exciting thing ever. And I remember my dad teaching me about the properties of stinging nettle. And I came home once with a bucket full of rose hips because I found them in the woods. I had no idea what they were, but I knew they were magical. And I brought them to my mom and I said, here you go. And she made this amazing jam and it was wonderful. So and I asked for a book on mushroom identification for my 7th birthday, and I got to be like a little mushroom expert, and it was a lot of fun. And for me, that really was all about my initiation into the world of food as healing and nourishing. Yeah.
Yeah, you can't get much more nourishing than food foraged straight from the wild. I'm sure those rose hips were just packed full of amazing things.
Yeah.
Do you still forage for things like that?
Yeah, I got hooked as a kid and I never stopped. So
yeah,
when I lived in Berkeley, California, I was known to leave notes in people's mailboxes if I saw like a tree bursting with ripe persimmons or medlars in their garden. I made friends with a lot of people just by leaving a note with my phone number and my name and saying, hey, I'd love to come pick that fruit. If you don't want it, I'll make you a pie. I'll make you cider. I'll make you whatever. Just let me come and pick it. Because it just made me so sad to leave these trees with food growing on them that people were not really, touching or eating. So
yeah, that's very true. I grew up in Phoenix and they have a ton of citrus trees. Even in like grocery store parking lots, there's citrus trees. But most of that fruit just falls to the ground. And, the people who have those trees are like, I cannot handle another grapefruit. Just take it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's great that you'd go by and help those homeowners deal with their excess persimmons.
Yes.
Yeah. So what brought you ultimately to specializing in fertility and pregnancy nutrition?
So I was an academic. I was teaching at UC Berkeley, and I was at home with my youngest child, who's now 7, and he was just born, And I started reading Nourishing Traditions, which was on my to-read list since I was starting to write my dissertation, and I had never gotten around to it. And I was just, sitting at home with this beautiful baby and thinking, it's such a privilege to have, to be able to have a family. And I sometimes joke that infertility is the only health problem I've never had. It's not really true, but I've had my share of health struggles, but infertility was never one of them. And so I decided that basically I was inspired by, by my experience of not having any struggles in this area to enroll in the Nutritional Therapy Association nutritional therapy practitioner training program with the goal of having a nutrition practice that focused on helping people make healthy families.
That's fantastic. That is such a needed thing in modern society. I've struggled with some infertility. I've had 2 miscarriages so far. And it's something I work with clients on as well, optimizing fertility. And there's such a need for amazing practitioners like yourself to help people with that. That's such a cool story. So many people come to, the health world having their own struggles. And it sounds like you certainly had your own. So coming to fertility from the other side of, it was easy for you. And so kind of what's going on with that? Why is it easy for some people? Why is it difficult for others? It's really a confounding question, to be honest.
Yeah, definitely. And, my mom probably had PCOS. My sister definitely did. Mm-hmm. And my daughter has it. And at least two of my 3 nieces have it. So, and my sister had 4 miscarriages. So, I definitely, you know, came from a family where there were issues, but like I said, I was somehow spared, but always really noticed, you know, with gratitude, the fact that this was an area of my life where I was blessed in many ways. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you for specializing in that and bringing this knowledge to a field that is in very much need of good practitioners like you. So
Yeah.
we wanted to talk about protein intake during pregnancy today. Why don't we start off just with the basics? Why do we need more protein during pregnancy, and how much of an increase are we really talking about?
Sure. Well, you know, how much is really a very bio-individual question. Partly, you know, how much of an increase depends on what your baseline consumption was. A lot of women don't really need to increase their overall food consumption in the first trimester. But once we really start building that growing baby beginning in the second trimester, I mean, always, you know, first trimester, if your hunger goes up, just by all means eat more and increase your protein, obviously in proportion not only to what your normal dietary patterns are, but also in relation to whether you went into the pregnancy already on a low protein diet, then you'll need to increase your protein consumption proportionally more. There isn't a magic recipe for exactly how much protein do we need in terms of how many grams, how many, you know, or how many, or what exact percentage of our diet the protein should be. That really is a somewhat subjective question. But generally speaking, it's pretty difficult to eat too much protein during pregnancy, unless that is literally all you're eating. Because if you're eating real food, then it's pretty difficult to overdo it, especially in pregnancy. Your digestive system will say enough when it's enough. So,
yeah, that's a good point. Your body will tell you when you've had enough meat. I think it would be very difficult to do anything like a carnivore or a very high meat diet when you were pregnant. It'd be just very uncomfortable and not enjoyable at all. So, yeah. And that's a great point that you make, that there isn't really an upper limit to be concerned about. I know a lot of women are concerned about that lower limit. So what can happen if a woman isn't eating enough protein, either during the preconception or in that second trimester where they're really building?
Yeah. So if protein consumption is insufficient, and this, definitely is a concern. For example, if you go into the pregnancy with a history of anorexia, if you go into the pregnancy with, with severe hyperemesis gravidarum and are throwing up a lot, you may not be holding down any nutrients, let alone, enough protein. So those are the two categories that I would be most concerned about. Somebody who has a hard time digesting protein or is on a vegan diet may also, or, low protein vegetarian diet is probably also not getting enough protein. So the main things that I would be concerned about in terms of not getting enough protein include the overconsumption of sugars and starches, just kind of fill up and make up for what you're not eating in terms of higher protein foods. And this definitely can be an increased risk factor for gestational diabetes. If you are not compensating in some way, it's really, really difficult to compensate for not eating enough protein by eating tons of fat. It's possible, but it's unlikely because your body, again, when you're pregnant, it will definitely not let you overdose on fat. And naturally occurring fats usually come abundantly in foods that are high in protein. So usually if you're eating enough protein, you're getting enough fat, as long as you're not eating just, boneless, skinless chicken breast and muscle meat with all the fat rubbed off. If you're eating real food in its natural state and in its whole form, then the chances are if you're getting enough fats, you're getting enough protein, and vice versa. Nonetheless, if you're not compensating in some way for not taking enough protein, it's likely that you're under consuming calories as well as nutrients in general across the board that the baby needs for proper growth and development. So, and also, this does also apply if you're not able to keep down your food that you're eating due to severe vomiting during pregnancy. So those are definitely areas where, not just a medical support is needed, but also nutritional support from somebody who's very experienced in whole food nutrition and functional support of health. Essentially, if you're not taking in enough nutrition during pregnancy, including protein, the baby will draw from mom's blood and bones for the minerals that the baby needs to grow, and from mom's muscles for protein, for just building the protein structures, which is a lot of the baby's body. So as you can imagine, this can definitely be incredibly depleting for mom and not ideal for baby. This is definitely a concern, especially, if this is not mom's first child, or if additional pregnancies are planned. And the closer the pregnancies are spaced, the bigger of a problem it can become.
That's a great way to frame that, is that a deficiency in protein, or just not having the optimal amounts, may not necessarily mean that your growing baby isn't getting enough protein, but it means that your baby is going to take your protein. And then once you've had that baby, you're going to have to make up for that in your own strength and muscles. And, postpartum depletion and depleting nutrients is a very real thing.
Definitely. I mean, we have to remember that our hormones are built from amino acids in great part, not just amino acids, but also cholesterol and other whole food based nutrients. Enzymes are proteins. They also are driven by minerals, which need to be abundant in the body, and balanced, again, which we need to get from a healthy daily nutrition. And also amino acids drive neurotransmitter function, which is so important for mental health and emotional health. Yesterday was Mental Health Awareness Day, and definitely, postpartum depression is something that should be looked at in terms of prevention during pregnancy, especially in a woman who has a history of nutritional deficiencies.
Absolutely. That's such an important point to bring up. Do you feel that protein or a deficiency in some of those certain proteins, because, we're not talking about just this one protein. There's a whole variety of them, that plays a significant factor in even the potential for postpartum depression?
Yeah, definitely. The more nutritionally depleted mom is in terms of, essentially complete proteins. And I think of, this kind of simplistically as being animal foods that are protein rich. So meat, seafood, eggs, dairy products. These are really the most complete animal proteins. And of course, organ meats. In addition, we really need our complete spectrum of minerals for good emotional and physical health, as well as basic growth and development, and fat soluble vitamins. It's a whole package.
Yeah. Everything that comes in real food, we really do need all of that, all those elements. Yeah. So how important is the quality of protein?
So the quality of protein, just like the quality of all food, is really important. The quality of animal foods really it's all about sourcing. When you purchase meat, eggs, dairy from sources basically that come from industrial sources. So, for example, confined animal feeding operations. Battery chickens for eggs and poultry. We're looking at a very polluted, very unhealthy, very contaminated food that has a very poor fat soluble vitamin content, a very high glyphosate content, which is basically from animal feed that is contaminated with this very popular herbicide, because it's cheaper to harvest food that is grown with this herbicide, and that does creep into the animal food as well as obviously plant foods like corn and wheat, and of course wine, which most women are probably not consuming during pregnancy anyway, and sugar. Those are the plant foods that are most contaminated with glyphosate. So inadequate fat soluble vitamins, a poor omega-3 to omega-6 ratio, which is really actually very important for fetal development, especially brain and nervous system development, and glyphosate toxicity, which the baby with an immature detoxification system, and especially with a poorly developed glutathione system, is not able to detoxify adequately during this stage of development. So the quality is very, very important.
Mm-hmm. That's significant. I think a lot of people are starting to become aware of glyphosate, which for anyone who's not familiar with that, it's the chemical in Roundup, the pesticide, the herbicide that's used on pretty much anything in America that we grow. I think a lot of people are becoming more familiar with that in terms of it being in, there's just that article that was posted all over Facebook that it's in cereals, it's in a lot of foods that a lot of people didn't realize. But the idea that it is also in your meat, that if the animal that you're eating has eaten feed or corn or whatever it is that has been grown with this chemical, that's being stored in the animal tissue, which you're then ingesting. So I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. So what are your recommendations on variety? If we know we need a certain amount of protein, we know quality is important. How important is the variety aspect, the different kinds of proteins?
Yeah, so both from the perspective of enjoying your meals and from the perspective of getting a really nice range of nutrients, we want to have as much variety as possible during pregnancy in nutrition, and high protein foods are no exception. I recommend, obviously excluding allergens and intolerances that are individual to the pregnant woman. Some people have some allergies. A lot of people have none. If you have food allergies or if you have known food intolerances, avoid those foods, obviously. But that being said, eat the widest range of foods possible, that you can source in a healthy manner. So eggs, dairy, modest amount of seafood, different types of poultry, different types of red meat, different types of organ meats, broths made with skin, bones, joints, meat stocks made with bones, meat, connective tissue, and including skin, tendons, animal feet, and so on. This is really an ideal mix. Even in terms of eggs, I like to remind people that it's not just about chicken eggs, duck eggs, quail eggs, those are all good. And fish eggs, if you can source them, from a high quality source. I really like Vital Choice Seafoods for wild caught seafood and fish eggs.
I don't think I realized they had fish eggs.
I believe they do. I won, I think, some salmon roe one year at a conference. It was really good.
Ooh, I'm going to have to check that out. I've been looking for a good source of fish eggs, and it's very difficult to find.
Yeah.
So we know that protein is important in general. We know a variety is important. The quality matters. Is there any recommendation in terms of macronutrients? Like, do you recommend that women trying to conceive or who have become pregnant follow a certain macronutrient ratio, or what's your perspective on that?
Well, there are some general guidelines. It really depends on the person to a great extent. So I'd like to think of macronutrients in terms of ranges. And of course, the most, we're talking about protein today, but I feel like the most controversial macronutrient these days in the world of preconception and pregnancy is starches.
Yeah.
And a lot of women end up on a very low vegetable diet because they're afraid of eating, too many carbohydrates. So first of all, I like to tell people, okay, at least half of your starches, half of your carbohydrates should come from low starch vegetables. You should not have any limit whatsoever on the amount of vegetables that you eat, except, your taste buds and your digestive response. I recommend eating a wide variety of different colored vegetables in any mixture that is palatable to you, of raw, cooked, and fermented. Just whatever appeals to you. I highly recommend subscribing to a community-supported agriculture box, going to the farmers markets and varying your choices, trying new stuff, especially if you're one of those people who has always just kind of thought, okay, in terms of, a rotation of 3 or 4 different types of vegetables like carrots, peas, broccoli. The vegetable world is a lot wider than that. So I think that one thing that really helps is really thinking of a base of a wide consumption of vegetables. And then, essentially starchy foods. Everybody is a little bit different in terms of how well they metabolize them. I see an equal number of women who are on a diet that is too low in starches and on a diet that is too high in starches for their particular situation. As women, most of us need what many people call the Goldilocks amount of starch for optimal hormonal balance. And fertility really means that we want to have enough starches, but not too many, because either too few starches or too many starches can really mess up fertility in a big way. Once we're pregnant, there's a lot more leeway in terms of starches. And I really see each situation being incredibly different. So a woman with preeclampsia or gestational diabetes, we're looking at a very different type of dietary recommendation versus a woman who has, strong blood sugar regulation abilities. So I work with ranges and I tailor them to my individual clients. And really, in terms of high quality fats, as long as you're sourcing your foods well and eating real food, not like canola oil or cottonseed oil. Those are not ideal by any stretch of the imagination. Soybean oil, corn oil, those are not optimal. Mm-hmm. As long as you're eating, high quality fats that are well sourced, then you're probably getting, a good ratio of a good amount of fat soluble vitamins, and that's super important too. So it's more about nutrient density than about a specific macronutrient breakdown that can be applied, to kind of the fertility and preconception population or to the pregnant population in general. I see a lot of wiggle room and leeway based on the individual situation.
Yeah, I think that's an important point. It's very tempting, and we all kind of want, to an extent, there to be a set of rules that we can follow. It's very comforting if we have this is what you need to do. But when it comes to health and your nutrition, you're right. It's very bio-individual, and each person's going to need something a little bit different from someone else. And kind of sussing out what that is for you is really part of life's work, is figuring out what your body needs and how to care for yourself. If someone finds that they're in tune with their bodies, they're finding this macronutrient ratio that feels good for them, but they're still seeing these posts, these articles, recommendations to hit a certain target, is there any risk of deficiency if someone has found what feels good to them? They feel that they've found a macronutrient ratio that's working for them. Do you think that there's still any risk of that person being deficient in really any of those three macronutrients?
It's possible, but usually, so I see a lot of situations where people are even eating optimally, on paper, but if they're not digesting properly or they have issues with absorption of their foods, they could definitely be nutritionally deficient. So, I would say, first of all, don't worry too much and
Sarah, are you still there? I think our internet might have gone out. We'll give it another minute and see if it comes back. Okay. All right, I think we've had an internet outage, so bear with us. I'm just going to hang out and see if the internet comes back for Sarah. She and I are on opposite sides of the world, and so sometimes these things happen. We'll see if it sorts itself out. Okay, I think she's going to restart. Hi, everybody. So anyone who's watching, if you have any questions for Sarah when she comes back, or if we need to do a kind of follow-up interview with her, we can do that if we need to reset the internet. Please type into the comments what your experience is with protein, especially if you've been pregnant, if this is an issue that you have thought about. We'd love to hear your opinions, your thoughts, and your questions regarding this. I know there's a lot of information that is difficult to suss out. Okay, I think we've got Sarah back. Hi. Sarah, you back?
Yes, I am.
Yay.
Yes. I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
I was just saying disconnect from your phone. I actually I'm talking from, I don't have a smartphone actually. I have a, a regular computer, but my internet connection pooped out on me, I think probably as karmic punishment for speaking ill of being constantly connected. So anyway.
That'll do it. Yeah.
So,
you mentioned to the world you need some time away from electronics, and
yeah,
your internet's going to go out.
yeah. So anyway, I apologize about that. So I don't know exactly when you stopped hearing me, and what the last thing I said was, but
yeah, I think that we were at a pretty good spot. We were just talking about the potential risks of a deficiency, even if someone has found what feels like a good macronutrient ratio for them. And you were talking about the fact that, even if you're eating a perfect diet, but you aren't digesting your food, then that's a whole other set of issues.
Yeah, definitely. So I really, call me biased, but I really think that every pregnant mom should work with a nutritional therapist who's trained and experienced in the area, because if there's any testing that needs to be done, to just reassure the mom that she is indeed well nourished, and we can tweak and adjust things as needed as we move along. If there are deficiencies, I think there's nothing more reassuring. I mean, you will not get reassured by hanging out in the forums and hearing everybody else's worries and concerns and what worked for them, because it may be completely different for you. Yeah. Worry is not good for your health, and it is definitely the top ingredient that needs to be avoided. So I'm all about empowerment and all about bio-individual, no nonsense, right for you support. You can't really go back in time and change your baby's in utero experience. So if you can be proactive and make it right from the beginning, so much better for everybody.
Absolutely. And like you were talking about earlier, this also plays a part in your nutrition after you've had your baby and the recovery period and what that's going to be like. So if you can be well proactive, then you can save yourself some grief at the end as well.
Yes. And optimal nutritional status during pregnancy, it's not a guarantee that breastfeeding will go perfectly or that you won't have any trouble. Breastfeeding definitely is its own interesting world. And there can be issues that come along the way, no matter how well you prepare. But the better prepared you are nutritionally, the better supported you are nutritionally, the likelier it is that you will that you will have fewer struggles and an easier time.
That's a good point too. So we've talked a bit about quantifying our protein need. There's definitely a stigma against red meat, and a lot of women are kind of hoping they can get their full, protein intake from chicken, turkey, and seafood, or really just chicken. What did those women really need to watch out for?
Well, we did talk about variety earlier. The fewer types of protein sources you have, the less nutrients you're going to get, and the more chances, the higher the chances that you'll have some kind of nutritional deficiency. So if you're just eating, skinless chicken breast, skinless turkey breast, chances are you're not going to get good fat-soluble vitamins. Your chances are you're not going to have enough omega-3 essential fatty acids. So I'm a big proponent for varying and including some red meat in the diet. I mean, there are many women who have perfectly healthy pregnancies without eating red meat. Some of these women are vegetarian. I'm not saying that you can't have a healthy pregnancy on a vegetarian diet. You can, but I do think it's a good idea to be followed by someone, particularly if that is your case. But if you don't have deep philosophical reasons for excluding red meat, please do not make the general kind of trend of concerns about red meat during pregnancy make you worried, because remember, we as human beings, we come from tens of thousands of years of nourishing pregnant women with all kinds of animal proteins, including red meat. Now, if you just eat red muscle meat, that's not very balanced either. But if you exclude it altogether, your chances of having iron deficiency anemia during pregnancy are going to increase. So if you don't eat red meat, then at least, eat some liver. If if you're a vegetarian, you may need to compensate with a high quality iron supplement during pregnancy to make sure that you're not becoming anemic as your blood volume increases, as it does greatly in the second trimester.
Mm-hmm. So that's kind of a perfect segue. I wanted to ask you about the micronutrients. And are there any certain micronutrients that you have a risk of not getting in your diet if you are not eating enough protein or enough of a variety?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, but the fat soluble vitamins are really important. Vitamins A, D, K2, vitamin E, which is mostly obtainable from plant sources. The people that I would be most concerned about not getting enough vitamin E would be people who are allergic to nuts and seeds. Well, if you're allergic to nuts and you're not allergic to seeds, then eat your seeds. Eat your, high quality oils like, extra virgin olive oil for vitamin E. Avocados are a great source of vitamin E. But for the food intake of vitamins A, D, and K2 mostly come from either, fermented, well, in the case of K2, these are fermented foods like natto, which is a fermented soy that is fermented with specific cultures, and cheese. And vitamin K1 is in green leafy vegetables for the most part, and things like broccoli, and best absorbed if you're taking it in with fats, because these are fat soluble. Remember, if you're just eating a plate of steamed broccoli and you're not putting any fats on your plate, you're not going to take up much of that vitamin K1 that is in your plate. Vitamin A, huge misconceptions about vitamin A during pregnancy. The biggest one is that beta carotene is vitamin A. It is not. And there are so many genetic, epigenetic, and enzymatic factors that determine your ability as a pregnant woman, or as just anybody in the population, your ability to convert your beta carotene to active vitamin A, which is what is needed for healthy fetal development, as well as for your own health as a mother. Now, one of the most ridiculous things that was ever told to me as a reason not to breastfeed my son by my mother-in-law, who was a very anti-breastfeeding person. She said, "Oh, you'll lose your eyesight." And I think that may be because somebody back in the day, maybe in the 1800s, in the family was very vitamin A deficient and may have had some serious problems with vision loss during breastfeeding because of the requirements for fat soluble vitamin A for babies' development, even outside of the uterus. So even after birth, these fat soluble vitamins are so incredibly important. And again, the body will draw these nutrients from the mother's stores and deplete the mom's health until there's nothing left. So it's really important to get your active vitamin A. Vitamin D can be taken in partly from foods, egg yolks, bacon from pigs that have been raised on the pasture, chickens that have been pasture raised. You have to eat the skin with the fat underneath. Fatty fish with skin on, and other foods, like liver, are rich in fat soluble vitamins, especially A, D, and K2. So again, just really going back to the greater variety you have, the more micronutrients you're going to have. And we didn't talk about a multi, but most women during pregnancy do benefit from having a multi, just as insurance in a way. Choline is a really important nutrient for fetal development and is really rich in egg yolks. Zinc is more abundant in animal foods than in plant foods, and it's very important both for fertility and for fetal development, eye health, for the health of sex organs. Really important, during preconception, both for sperm health and egg health. I don't know if you saw that beautiful video of the moment of conception and the light that is released right when the sperm fertilizes the egg.
Yes, that was incredible.
That's zinc that causes light. So don't forget that. That's super important. For babies' development as well as maternal health, not to mention the prevention of stretch marks, which is a concern for many women. The collagen and related nutrients for connective tissue support that these nutrients are found in bone broths made with bones, joints, skin, and tendons, bone broths, or meat stocks. This goes way beyond the stereotype of just eating red muscle meat, and that being the ultimate animal food. We're not talking about steak here. We're talking about, your grandma's or great grandma's, depending on who you are, just traditional bone broth, oxtail soup, that kind of thing, but chicken soup made with the whole chicken.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and the chicken skin, the best part.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we've kind of talked about, I was going to ask you about, women know that they need some protein, but there is this social perception that you shouldn't eat too much protein in general. You shouldn't eat red meat. You shouldn't eat the chicken skin. We've talked pretty thoroughly about the benefits of those things. Do you maybe want to discuss how people can kind of get around these perceptions that they might still have in their own heads of, I shouldn't eat the chicken skin, but now they're in the middle of their pregnancy and they're needing some more protein and starting to think about these ideas? How can we kind of support women that are concerned about these, just because there is that social pressure?
Well, first of all, if you're pregnant, you will get all kinds of unsolicited advice and a negative feedback, no matter what you do. It doesn't matter if you're right or wrong. And it doesn't stop once your baby's born. I was yelled at once for not having my daughter on a leash when I was in the library. I was like, she's a child dog. Yes. I was like, okay, what are you talking about? You will get berated for the most ridiculous things. I had terrible arguments with my mother-in-law who did not want me to breastfeed. She still hates me. And my youngest is 7. So, you can't make everybody happy. So the first thing that you need to get over when you're pregnant is your desire to justify yourself to the world and to make everybody around you happy. It does not matter what you eat. What other people think about what you eat. It doesn't matter what you eat. So first of all, if you're concerned or unsure or uncertain of what you should eat, I highly recommend working with a nutritional therapist who is well-versed in preconception and pregnancy support and the support of young families with small babies and, breastfeeding moms and postpartum healing. So that you can get individualized guidance and a personalized in-depth answer to your questions. Now, for people out there who are just generically wondering, I highly recommend some reading on the topic. One of the best books and my top recommendations is Deep Nutrition by Kate Shanahan and Luke Shanahan. It's a beautiful book about epigenetics and how food really just feeds our genes and supports preconception, fertility, fetal growth and development, and beyond. And then another book that I find really supportive and helpful and kind of demystifying is the Nourishing Traditions book of baby and child care by Sally Fallon Morell and Tom Cohen. Really helpful and very, preconception, pregnancy, and small child centered book that really talks about the role of real food, traditional eating, and those kinds of things. again, there will be people who are not in agreement about this, but this is essentially how our human species evolved before the rampant spread of modern diseases. This is how we ate. And were they all wrong? Probably not. The most beautiful, most healthy babies come from families where the moms consume healthy, real foods throughout pregnancy in a variety of forms, both vegetable and animal in origin.
Mm-hmm. So let's just touch on protein for vegetarian moms. I'm sure we've got a few that are going to be watching this. I don't want to leave them out. What advice do you have for these women if they're definitely vegetarian, they're not looking to include any animal protein? How can they still get their requirement?
Yeah. So, I guess I would like to make a distinction between vegetarian and vegan. Mm-hmm. So vegetarian can include, people who are consuming eggs and dairy, and in some cases even fish, in some cases just shellfish. Some people who identify as vegans do consume shellfish because of the B12. Now, I definitely don't take it upon myself to change, to make it my mission to change anybody's mind or philosophy. I do think that part of being a nutritional therapist who is supporting people from a bio-individual perspective, that really means also respecting your philosophical beliefs. If you come to me saying, look, I don't eat meat because of my philosophical beliefs, I will support you in, nourishing your body and growing a healthy baby within that framework. And that's, perfectly fine. But it does require, working with somebody who is experienced and knowledgeable and who can support and give feedback on the nutrition, and also monitor nutritional status via, recommending targeted tests to make sure that that mom isn't deficient in certain nutrients. If you are a vegetarian who's eating dairy and eggs, definitely, don't stop now during pregnancy. Those are really great sources, both of high quality complete protein, as well as fat soluble vitamins, choline in the case of eggs, lutein, and again, in the case of the egg yolks, omega-3 fatty acids, and, all kinds of goodness in those foods, as well as minerals, of course. And one of the things that I do want to add is that soy protein powder, hemp protein powder, and pea protein powder are very high in phytoestrogens. And so they may not be appropriate to hormonal balance during pregnancy, particularly during the first trimester, when progesterone really does need to be supported and not suppressed via the consumption of foods that are really high in phytoestrogen. So again, if you are on a diet that relies mostly on plant foods, or on a limited amount of animal foods for protein, for whatever reason, please do not hesitate to reach out and work with a nutritional therapy practitioner or consultant who is specialized in the area.
Absolutely. And for so many of the reasons that we talked about earlier, such as just making sure that you are digesting your food so that you can make sure you're getting all of the things that you assume are in your food.
Yeah. Definitely. I mean, and this is one of the areas where, that we do talk about when we're choosing a multivitamin during preconception and pregnancy, because just because those nutrients are listed on the label does not mean that they are in bioavailable form.
Yeah.
So that is definitely a huge concern.
Yeah, absolutely. So as we're kind of winding down, I don't want to take up too much of your time. If someone watching only remembers one thing from this interview, what do you want them to really understand?
Just, eat real food, and eat a variety of real food, eat the rainbow.
Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely. So before I let you go, since Halloween is coming up soon and it's a very sugar candy holiday, do you have any tips, recipes, resources to help our viewers have a healthier holiday this year?
Yeah, definitely. And, I do want to preface this by saying that I really do hope that, that your healthy Halloween will be tasty and enjoyable, and it definitely can and should be that way. And I wrote a post about the topic of a healthy, happy Halloween with some tips, with some of my favorite tips and recipes. It is on my website at buildnurturerestore.com/Halloween. But, to make a long story short, if you love Halloween, you're in a place where people are celebrating it, don't be a party pooper, have fun. And, you definitely can do that with tasty and healthy treats. I like homemade gelatin snacks. I like spiders made with deviled eggs and black olives. And of course, I'm a huge fan of the Teal Pumpkin Project, which is all about fun non-food items that are safe for kids with food allergies and other health concerns that make conventional packaged Halloween treats unsafe choices. So I also think that if you're a pregnant mom, and you really should participate in the Teal Pumpkin Project, if nothing else, because if those pregnancies strike, it's really easy and quick to eat a whole bunch of Reese's or Snickers, and that's not very good for you. So I really think you should stock up on those non-food snacks, set yourself up for, doing a Teal Pumpkin Project Halloween, and just go all out making yourself some healthy, delicious gelatin snacks. Make some homemade truffles, make some fudge, have fun, enjoy it. But don't fill up on those nasty packaged GMO, like high sugar things. I never really liked them. And they don't really satisfy, you know what I mean? Whereas something like, for me, my grandma's fudge is one of those iconic, satisfying treats. So, whatever it is that makes you happy, avocado chocolate mousse with whipped cream or without, you can totally make a vegan recipe. Work out, no problem. All kinds of healthy, delicious treats. It doesn't have to be about, you just have kale chips because, you have to be healthy. Unless you have gestational diabetes and you really have to look out for the sugars there, you can still enjoy some sweet treats. We're just not looking at them being packaged industrial, glyphosate-filled things.
Yeah, absolutely. Or having a 5-gallon bag of it in your house.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, we will link to your blog post about having a healthy Halloween so that people can reference that. And thank you so much for this interview. This has been really enlightening for me, and I hope that it helped clarify some concerns for the people watching as well.
Yeah, thank you so much, Molly, for inviting me. It was really fun. And I apologize for the technological snafu there in the middle.
Oh, no problem. It happens. And I stayed on and I explained to everybody that we are on opposite ends of the world right now. And so these things happen.
Yeah, they can. Okay.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.